Hello.
Hello. Is this thing on? Is this still the
Uh,
cold open from the
uh,
last episode?
this is the fourth cold open, although on this one, I believe we have lost both Rocco and Miles into the ether. That is time and being, awake, I guess. So,
Oh, I think what you're trying to say, Matt, is that this episode is an always strikes late episode, which is for all
indeed,
of our dear listeners out there who may have joined us more recently, episodes where we record very late in the evening because of time zone and existential challenges. And
indeed,
in this case,
mostly existential challenges for me.
yeah,
Existence, the challenge. Go ahead.
for both of us
Sorry.
without coffee right now, that's for sure. And they tend to be a bit loopier, so everyone
Hmm.
buckle up for that. Also, we are totally untethered today from our normal trio or occasional trio plus guest status because Miles is flying somewhere over the Atlantic right now. So instead, you just
Indeed.
got us, me, Jack, and Matt, my co-host over the West Coast. And so we're going to send you some sweet, sonorous rhythms from deep in the evening. You'll probably listen to this like at noon or something.
Yeah. This is always a great little what do they call it? You put it on to fall asleep to. What's those tracks? I feel like our Always Strikes
Like
Late
white noise or like an ocean
episode.
sound.
I hope we're not white noise. White noise would be the
It's like a
Hey
whale
guys,
song.
ASMR, right?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Listen to
so
ASL for good REM. There you go.
Yeah, ASLREMER. And then we can be an REM cover band too. Anyways, this is entirely the gist of Always Strikes Late here as we ramble on with semi-muted voices. So if you like what you're listening to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It doesn't really cost you anything, but it really helps us out a lot. So
Yep, yep.
you may hear a little noise in the background from my dog deciding to drink all of the water all at once, as he loves to do. Then that will actually help us with the white noise, like thunderstorm background. So,
Absolutely. Two important sub points there. One, if you do like things to cost you something, you do have the opportunity to join the Patreon at various levels. Some exceptionally awesome and more expensive, some still very awesome and very nominal just to join the Discord. And feel free to do so if you'd like me to hear. And of course, we have a pretty cool merch store also available to the link in the show notes where you can buy all sorts of things which have been audience tested to actually be wearable and engaging and delightful with their designs. All right, enough self-plugging for us.
indeed.
This is, second point, a podcast about Age of Sigmar, so we should probably get around to talking about that at some point. And for
I guess might
yeah,
as well.
absolutely. So, as we all know, we are communally crossing the great desert out there at the end of third edition, before fourth edition comes, as Games Workshop slowly dribbles us content and teasers about what it's going to be like, and no one really knows what that world is going to be. So
I mean,
it's kind of tough. It's kind of a tough time to be hobbying or buying or getting into stuff or trying to wrap your mind around the latest meta.
it
But
very much is that, like, the dead space in an ocean where sailors used to run into it, where there was no wind, and you just kind of sat there and hoped the wind would pick up for your sails. We're kind of in
absolutely,
that spot where it's like, okay, what eccentric stuff can I do now? I can doom scroll through every Warhammer community article, which there have been some. When Zinch lost summoning, that was an interesting day for everyone who was talking about it, I believe.
well, that's the
But
thing, right? They're just like they're sparking mini outrages without the full picture. So maybe it's that bad, maybe it's not. I mean, we'll see.
yeah,
But that's like the state we live in right now. But we must persevere in these times before the great unknown. And that's what
indeed.
we're going to talk a bit about today because I had a chance actually this weekend to go attend the Ironweld GT, right here outside of Boston. Great time, great event, put on by the Wicked Dicey folks, so friends of the channel, and it's always a really excellent tournament, like a huge draw of some big names from across the country and globe. And so you see
Nice.
some folks who are typically at the top of the charts in ITC or in Team America or otherwise, kind of running around and winning GTs or taking names in their various metas. And it's a pretty great time. Typically, it's this and the Everwinter event they do every year are kind of the anchors to their event setup. But luckily the stars aligned. I was able to get out there for this one. So we thought maybe today we just talk a bit about that journey and some of the friends we made along the way.
That's the
So
best journey with
yes,
friends.
yes, indeed. So, for those of you who may have listened to the last couple episodes, I've been alluding or peppering, here and there some chat about this Darkoath army that I was going to bring to a tournament, and that was indeed this tournament. And I did indeed bring the Darkoath in force. So let's go on this journey together. What do you think, Matt? Should I tell them the list to give them like a sense of what we're talking about before we get into it all?
Well, so I think with the Dark Oath, there's I guess I feel like this army may have just run under the radar, right?
Yeah.
Um, just because we're so close. I honestly thought it was going to be what is their name? Uh, the Bretonians of Age of Sigmar. I honestly thought that was going to be the last set of rules that would fall under, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before the changeover. But Dark Oath is definitely fallen under, and so it may be something worth going through and kind of explaining how the list works. Now, I know you've kind of talked to a little bit about it on some of the other episodes, but we could really like break down how the Dark Oaths work, and how you use them in the games, how the list is built, because that
Absolutely.
four of those fell beasts, right? Fell beasts,
Oh, Wilder Fiends, or
wilder fiends.
Wilder Friends if you're in the right side of history, not with that Sigmar who lied.
I'm painting far too much of those Famir, and uh, I'm getting everything mixed up because I'm making up names for every unit. But yeah, wildebeest is a four wildebeest list, right?
Well, that's the fun thing, and actually, there are four of them I painted up, plus a fifth kind of maybe could be a Demon Prince, could be a Wildebeest as need be, but I only had three in the list, and it's because of the crazy multiplications that go on here. So I'll give a quick rundown so that all the rest of what I described makes sense. So there was the old sub factions for Slaves of Darkness, right? And one of them was the Ravagers, which I chose for this list. And not that this will matter in a month, but in the current world, a
Hey, it could
Ravagers,
still matter. You know,
it maybe it'll be the same, who knows? But in the current world, there's a command ability usable by a Ravagers hero in any phase that lets you bring back one destroyed unit. And it could be any Darkoath unit, Marauder unit, Cultist unit, and that's pretty much the limitation. But keyword is Darkoath, and all this new stuff is Darkoath.
mhm.
The Darkoath Chieftains of Darkoath, the War Queens, of course, that were there before Darkoaths, the Marauders are Darkoaths, the Wilder Fiends are Darkoaths. And the Wilder Fiends are like these gribbly monsters live in the forest, and it used to be like the family, friends, or kin of these Darkoaths who have an uncomfortable kind of tribal worshiping relationship with chaos and sort of just have these things as sort of like juiced up spawn to follow them around, demanding sacrifice and helping them out.
And
And
one of the most beautiful models they've put out in a long time.
so cool, so cool. And
Like
and
it
and
hits every cryptid, like it every cryptid like checkbox that for all those like paranormal nerds. It
yep.
is like the Wendigo and Skinwalkers and all that stuff just kind of rolled into one. Although the
It's that like
Skinwalker thing, I'm not going to go too far on a tangent. That stuff has been taken over completely by TikTok, and we're not going to go down that too far. But it
totally
looks like
fair,
every
but
cryptid.
it does look like every cryptid. It has like dark eldritch forest vibe down to a T, and it really hasn't existed before, I think, in the same way in Age of Sigmar, despite
Yeah.
all the Sylvaneth and all that cool stuff. So I too was smitten by this, which is why I kind of went down this road when they came out with that box a couple months ago and started figuring out what I had. and realizing I had quite a lot that could become this, just with a little rebasing and some work. And
Mhm.
so I was able to put together, this Ravager subfaction list, which can take advantage of that ability, as well as all of the stuff that Darkoath would bring to the table. So let me run through what's in there first, and I'll just kind of explain a little bit about that stuff, just so people
Cool.
know.
Lay it on me.
First, it's like, pretty basic, Chaos Order, Karkadrak, be the general, with Death Dealer, and the Conqueror's Crown, the Mark and Nurgle. Then getting more into the Dark Oathy stuff, which is pretty much the whole rest of the list. 2 Dark Oath War Queens with the Undivided Mark. 2 Chaos Sorcerer Lords with a Mark and Nurgle, and Merciless Blizzard plus Hoarfrost and Demonic Speed, respectively. I'd taken Warlord Battalion to get the enhancement if anyone's curious how they got that.
Mhm.
Then a Dark Oath Chieftain of Warsteed, which is one of the new War Scrolls, Undivided. 10 Dark Oath Savagers, because of course you have to bring them in. They were like the original Dark Oath unit you could kind of find.
Yeah.
Then 3 units of the new Dark Oath Marauders, reinforced once each. 2 of them with the spears, and 1 of them with the raider weapons. Plus 5 of the new Dark Oath Fell Riders with the javelins. 1 Fomeroid Crusher, and the stars of the show, 3 of the Wilderfiends. Now the thing about the Wilderfiends is probably like a really important thing just to call out for chatting about it more,
Mhm.
is that they have a whole bunch of funny abilities. One is they're hard to target, can't be visible, they're over 12 inches away from stuff.
Love that.
2, yeah, exactly. 2, they're kind of like a squishy but mediocre combat threat, so you can do a little work if they get in there and have a chance to swing per die. And then, kind of most importantly, they have 2 signature abilities. One is that they feed off the suffering and death of things. If anything dies nearby them, they get a kind of like a point to use up to a maximum of 6. If any Dark Oath thing dies nearby them, they get 2 points for every one thing that dies. So they basically just need a battery up to 6 resource points. And when they want to trade them in, they can do a bunch of stuff. They can either dump all those points to roll some dice and have a chance of making Dark Oath units strike first.
Mhm.
They can instead do it to heal themselves. They can instead do it to maybe shut off the ability of certain nearby enemy units to get command abilities. Or perhaps, like most importantly, they can do it to dump all of those points. So think 6 if you get any kind of resource into them,
Mhm.
into any 3-ups becoming mortal wounds. They can just drop on stuff within 18 inches, one
Which
by
is so
one.
gross. That's so
No
gross.
visibility needed. Just like sprinkle them out. And you roll it first and assign. Like it's crazy. And that's the theme of the list, using that mechanic and having fun with it a lot. And the second is the crazy recursion, because not only are the Dark Oath cultists coming back all the time, the Ravagers, these things can be brought back too. And when you bring back a new one, it's replacement of the original destroyed unit, right? So it's a new Dark Oath thing you brought back, but critically, it's not the same one that was there before. And they have another ability where if a Dark Oath hero dies, like a War Queen or a Chieftain, like they might become a Wilder Fiend. Like that's how these things come to be, right? Most Wilder Fiends were like your great uncle. You
Yeah.
just went a little bit too crazy.
They're happy.
So
They're happier, more human spawn. They're spawned with a human touch, right?
exactly. They're the spawn, and maybe stick around a bit longer, and want to eat like a blood sacrifice every moon or two.
Yeah,
So yeah, so good to have in your pocket. But you roll a dice when a hero dies, and on a 2-up, you get a Wilder Fiend. So you can basically bring back more than what you started with. And when they come back from the death mechanic, they can come back anywhere on the table, either within the 6 inches of the edge, outside of 9 of enemies, or near a terrain feature, within 6 inches of a terrain feature,
which
outside
is
of
so
9.
wacky. That's so wacky.
It's so good. Now that they're really squishy, like they're a 5-up save, no ward, and 9 wounds. So
Mhm.
they will die to a stiff breeze, but they're fun.
If they're
So
not targetable, all you need is the bodies in the way, right?
exactly. So think of this. This is the list I was bringing, and the idea was to play with these mechanics. Now, it was going to be a fun journey and a pretty crazy and busy month of doing other things meant that I had about 2 games of practice with this theoretical list before this tournament. So buckle up, we're in for a wild
It's
ride.
wonderful. That's how we do it, right?
Absolutely. So first things first, though, before I talk about my journey at this amazing event, I have to shout out a couple of our Patreon members and listeners who were there. Scott Hawk and Eddie Carando, saw them both in the flesh. Actually got a
Hell
chance to
yeah.
play Eddie, which was an incredibly fun game, which I'll describe later. But Scott was actually perhaps the most fashionable man at the show because he was wearing one of our brand new T-shirts on day one, and I think he turned some heads.
Oh, I bet
Scott,
he looks sharp.
please comment in the Discord on some of the most positive appraisal we've gotten for just to encourage others.
I love it. I love to hear it. Miles put so much work onto those designs. Yeah, I'm kind of stoked. I'm gonna see some pictures.
Oh,
You're gonna have to
definitely.
post some.
I
Someone's
got
gonna
a
have
whole
to post some.
bunch of pictures from the games. I'll certainly post in our channel, and of course, I'm sure Scott will throw up some stuff he has as well. He was bringing his absolutely beautiful Nurgle army and did quite well with it.
Ooh.
Uh, and Eddie was bringing his Slaves to Darkness, man after my own heart there, with tons of Ergart, and also did quite well with it. But yeah, well, let's jump into it. So I started off the tournament, and it was one of those really funny moments where like they do a pairing, and then you are walking up and you're talking to your opponent and saying hi, like kind of looking across the table and like said, "Oh, what's this army? How's this gonna be?" And then someone has dropped or there's some issue and they have to redo it. And so it was like I think originally 52 players in this thing, ended up
Hmm.
being 50 at the end of the day. So something happened. We had to like click the button again. And
Oh,
I,
yeah,
oh
good
yeah,
hard reset preparing.
exactly. And nothing wrong with that, but it's always just sort of funny because you wonder like what the game would have been if you'd had like the other opponent.
Hmm.
And wasn't bad. I walked up and I thought I was about to play this guy who I don't even recall his name because we hadn't had a chance really to continue the conversation past like the first 4 seconds. But he was playing he was playing the sea elves, of course, and like, oh, okay, here we are, turtles, sharks, all that kind of stuff. And I was feeling pretty good about it. And then I turn around and the button pressed again. And instead I was playing Marcella Hilo, friend of the channel, member of Team America, great, cool
Hmm.
person, played her before, always a fun time, with a game. And it was great a chance to match up. And I hadn't for like a couple of years. But of course, I was like, oh, this is gonna be a very different game because she's bringing Daughters of Cain with like 15 bow snakes and 15 of the stalkers who can like crystal and touch you, and
Hmm.
of course Marathi Cain, plus some
So,
other things.
so very. That sounds like actually a fairly good counter to you, just being able to keep distance and teleport. I'm gonna presume.
Yeah, I mean, she was doing, the sub faction for the teleporting, and it was, and we kicked this off, playing on the let's think Spring of the Trap. So there was pretty good objective setup for me and potential ambushing, but yeah, like
Hmm.
I'm not gonna kill Marathi Kane immediately.
Yeah,
15 fighting snakes and 15 bow snakes are gonna cause me problems, and the shooting from the bow snakes is quite oppressive on the things they can target, right?
yeah,
So
very much so. That their reach is always surprising.
exactly, exactly. So the game ended up being a ton of fun. I think we both ended up having a really good time, and it was some really like tight moments going back and forth, and it was like neck and neck the whole game. I did get
Nice.
a double turn at one point, so the rains of death from the bow snakes was quite oppressive, and the Karkadak Lord had a kind of brought his foam noodle moment when it came into trying to death dealer his way through a sufficient number of them, but there was a lot of fun, a lot of fun swings back and forth. Uh, End of the day, a couple notable call outs. One is we did kill Maratha Kane at the end of the day, so I
That's
would say, yeah, that's what do they call it? Like the symbolic victory there. There's something
I
good there.
I'd call that like a moral victory, especially for
Moral
little
victory.
Darkoath humans. That's a moral
Exactly.
victory.
They dragged down a goddess, at least temporarily.
Yeah, that was a
Um,
David and Goliath moment right there, right?
exactly, exactly. Also, I was really taught to respect the power of like that crystal touch ability off of
Oh
the,
yeah.
yeah. it's so cool where they can just sort of say, okay, number of models in a unit at any point, just roll that many dice and the 2 up. That's mortal wounds. Like that's
Hmm.
very potent. And what she was what Marcella was doing so effectively was just liquefying any of the beasts who were fighting her, at any given time. Like it was very easy for her to point destroy those things. So it was pretty cool, and she used them like super well. Uh End of the day, it came down to the wire, and it came down to a single die roll that turned it from a tie to a minor loss at like I think 28-26 or something like that. It was she had the heart riders, I think it was the harpies, and I'd forgotten they have like the ability to a 4-up, like just fly away after they activate.
Yeah.
And I'd taken the Enthrall the Chaos, battle tactic. And so I had two Wilder Fiends pinning them on each side who charged in, and had to activate elsewhere first to get rid of Marathi Kane, which worked. And then got the 4-up, flew away, dropped the tactic. That was the difference. But great game, great game. So that was the way we started off the tournament. Had a laugh with that, and finished off, the pre-lunch component of day one, and then it was on to round two.
Nice. And not a bad way to start too when it's just a dice roll, right? That's always like for me, that's always a fun game. Is when it comes down to like one roll, right? Then I know I've had a good close game. Um,
Absolutely. Like, had it been a three, those two Wilder Fiends would have 100% murdered the fragile little harpies without
yeah.
kind of almost any doubt. And that would have been just, one of those little blue dots, on the time marker. But,
Hmm.
no regrets. I mean, I think it was a fun, well played game, really enjoyable kind of to see how that matchup worked. I hadn't had a chance to see the daughters in a long time, and certainly not Marathi Kane doing what she does. Uh, so again, Marcella, where we were out there, thanks to the game, great time there. And then, of course, I surged into round two, down one. So the dream was still alive of doing pretty well, but slightly farther than, whatever I might have come into it, like my greatest fantasies of just showing
Hmm.
everyone the world of the Dark Oath. But I wasn't disappointed with their performance. I had learned that they play in a really weird way because all of those bodies die so quickly. They can come back real easy. They can maybe take stuff down the murder rolls they get based upon being near Dark Oath heroes because it's like a corn thing. 5-up, they can do immortal if they die. But
Hmm.
they're like one wound, 5-up save,
Yeah.
medium low combat potential. They're there to block you, but they're not chaos warriors. They're there
They they
temporarily.
they feel like older Beasts of Chaos. When I read through the packet, the way that they play, which is we're not gonna like roll stomp your army. We're here to take objectives, be annoying, bring more guys back, and rinse and repeat. Right?
Oh,
Old Beasts of Chaos.
that's
So
exactly what it was. Like you slaughter the 20, feeds the wildebeest. They spew out their fireballs and do tons of damage, do kind of stuff. And then some chieftain brings back 10 of the 20 that did that, and they just run up and take the objective you left behind or screen something. And,
yeah,
it continues.
yeah.
But,
It sounds like a lot of fun to play. To be honest, it sounds like so
it
much
is
fun.
so much fun, but so hard on your body because, you have
Yeah.
like a million models. You're just moving them around, trying to break
Hmm.
them, trying to think where to teleport or drop them or what the right choice is. So it's quite strenuous compared to some builds, but a lot of fun. So I don't regret it. I kind of forgot my workout for a couple of days though.
Nice.
All right. So moving on to number two. My second game was against a guy named Rye Brooks. Really nice guy. Hadn't had a chance to meet or play him before, but he was such a great time. And you see, I think he's gonna listen to the show now. I don't think he's had a chance to yet, but put it on his radar. And if you're listening out there, Rye, thanks for the great game and welcome to the ASL community. What I'll say about the game was it was also neck and neck like the whole time until right near the end,
Mm.
and I managed to flip it my way. So I ended up getting the victory, but it was a really interesting build because he wasn't bringing techless. I think if he had a techless, it would have been a real rough counter to me. Instead, he had a Cenarian Lightner. He had a Cathalar. He had
Hmm.
Elion and Elithor. He had Sabarith. He had the Light of Eltharion. And then he had 25 Blade Lords as his like battle line, like 2 units of 10 and a unit of 5.
That's that's a lot of Blade Lords.
It was a lot of Blade Lords. And beyond
Those
that, it was
guys
like,
mulch.
did they do? They're really scary. But like, that plus a couple units of Dawn Riders, right?
Hmm.
And like, I guess the Gnashing Jaws and the Grave Tide. So I'm looking at this stuff and saying to myself, well, this is a different list, but let's go. Uh, things went pretty well, but they were also some pretty fun call out moments. I mean, on my side, when things were hit, they did their reflective mortal wounds. The Wilder Fiends were good about murdering things with fireballs. Like I burninated an entire unit of 10 Blade Lords pretty
Nice.
much for full. I definitely killed Severith that way. I definitely killed other things that way. But also a lot of things died uh to some pretty potent moves from him, including I guess Severeth, he would zip around having gotten like like that's the speed of Hish. And he
Hmm.
would make sure to run over like one of my wizards, tag them, go into just within 12, assassinate them, and scoot away. And because
Yep.
of the number of threats on the battlefield, I really didn't have a chance to deal with him till later in the game. And thank God I did, because you charged a man. I managed to kill him between a combination of Wilder Fiends and fireballs, and it's one very hairy combat. But it was probably the thing that got me the game because it meant he couldn't assassinate like my lone remaining character I needed to get some stuff done
That makes
in the
sense.
final turn of the game for battle tactics and objectives and all that. The other thing was I really had not remembered how hard the Light of Eltharion is to kill
Yeah.
without just mortal wounds. And like when I was killing these Blade Lords, I mean, it was good they died, but
Hmm.
not dumping them into the Light of Eltharion, even with like a 5-up ward save from being near one of the spell auras, he was so much harder to kill than that. He was
Oh
so much
yeah.
harder to kill. Like I literally right after that charged in the Karkadrak Lord, and he's meant to be this sticky, hard to kill nuisance with the Mark and Nurgle.
Oh,
Only 2 attacks from him after he split attacks were enough to kill a Wilder Fiend and like bring him to death's door, so he's like finished off by a horse or something nearby. And I was made for very much a back foot moment in the game. But those Blade Lords were doing work with their mortal wound strikes and like all the stuff they can do.
yeah. That sounds like a really interesting kind of like tank plus move combo to be like just when somebody puts down 10 Blade Lords on the field, I get nervous. Just because they're such a well balanced unit for what they can take on,
Mhm.
like either the mix of mortal wounds or it's the other attack profile, if I remember correctly. Granted, we've had so many Lumineth books that it's hard to remember the rules, but I know to fear them now.
Oh yeah.
um, the other thing that's it's interesting seeing Severith have a comeback here. I've seen him in a lot of lists lately, rolling around, and he is just hard to deal with. Like that specific unit, I feel like I have a lot of experience fighting against them, and you and I remember when the rules for that model came out, we were just like, that's hands down the best model in the game, yada yada yada, and it ended up
Yeah,
being that
yeah.
for a long time.
Well,
It's
I remember
still
the Fox lists were just crazy for a little bit
mm-hmm.
of it.
It still feels like they can almost bring that level of insanity if they wanted to, but probably lose out on objectives. But that model is just that thing just wrecks havoc. The only way I have ever found to kill him is just get him in the center of the board somehow. Make it so I can catch him off guard. And if he tries to um, move away, if I've got one unit next to him, I've also got like two other units just hanging out, ready for him to move that way. So
I
it's
hear you
like
there.
really, you're just waiting for them to make a mistake when it comes to that model. It feels like every time. It's like, do you have one odd placement or something you didn't think about? Okay, that's the only time I'm going to be able to capitalize on that.
I think that's pretty true. I mean, my feeling in Severeth, not that I have like radically extensive experience fighting it, but it is such a flexible and mobile unit that
Hmm.
if he is like being cagey with him, whoever you're playing, or she is being cagey with him, whoever you're playing. You have to have like the scalpel to deal with it, like the point click like response. Like in some cases, like this list might, right? But like if he was in a corner and he was within 18 inches of like two Wilder Fiends, I'll just fireball him down.
Yeah.
But that is not a guarantee, and it's an 18-inch range, and he can move so fast, he's not going to be there, for many of the times.
Yeah. And the other fun thing on
Oh,
it too, right, is like they like you can bluff with them, just like throw a bunch of stuff into them, but they can still get out there and just heal right back up just by bouncing around. So you got to take them out all at once. Like so there's no half-ass in it with those. That's what makes it such a fun model to play against and like play with, I think. For me at least. Like it's always a threat until it's completely gone.
it's so true. It's so true. Well, it was a fun game with this one, and ended up squeaking it out. But it definitely highlighted again that this list is built for bringing back bodies, popping people up unexpectedly, throwing more stuff at you, and just
Hmm.
even though how much of the meat you've carved through, there's more to come when you've been whittled down, or something has come out of the woods and grabbed you while you were distracted by the other four things. And that's with Wilder Fiends pop up in funny parts of the battlefield. That's with models of Marauders coming back or running around, and it ended up working out, but down to the wire, and we you know
Nice.
had a blast, but like I was sweating bullets at times there because it was razor thin. So fun game there, and then it was time for the third game to conclude day one. And look at the matching after like what the 15 minutes they give you between rounds two and rounds three.
That's so painful. It's like I have
Oh,
just enough time for ibuprofen for my old man back.
literally, like forget any of the vendor hall stuff. There's some cool stuff I want to see. Never had a chance this tournament. But I got to the moment for round three, and it was going to be Justin Hagelin, who's a friend of the channel, friend of mine, from up in Maine, and you can associate with Wicked Dicey folks as well. And he was bringing some Night Hunt.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this was a fun one. Seen some Night Hawk before, but he was doing like the Scarlet Doom, so tons and tons and tons and tons of
Hmm.
Blade Geist Revenants.
Which are
Uh,
just terrifying.
yeah, and I absolutely agree. Like they're scary as heck right now, the 2-inch range. And he
Hmm.
brought like a Cruel Gas Cruciator, a Spirit of Torments, a Guardian of Souls, and I think like another Cool Gas Crusader, another Spirit of Torment, and then
Yep.
a reinforced Blade Guys unit, another reinforced Blade Guys unit, some Spirit Hosts, and like 3 units of Hex Race, I think. Yeah. So lot of running around with these guys. So I kind of did the thing, and this was on the this the one they used for this pack, which was funny. It was one of the older missions. I'm trying to recall its name right now. It's like sort of shaped like a diamond, and you like turn on objectives one at a time. Just repurpose with that part of the rules for this tournament sandbox.
What is that called? I know what mission you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah. It was fun, but just has. Oh, I misspoke actually. That wasn't this mission. This one was Fountains Frost.
Oh, oh, oh,
Yeah,
joy.
yeah. So, here I am trying like not to blow up my own guys unless I want to, because that's also
Hmm.
a thing sometimes to power up the Wilder Fiends. And I have like the, Fulmoroid Crusher with his bongo drums there to do just that. Uh,
Nice.
and it ended up being like a really cagey match for like the first 2 or 3 turns. Like we didn't want to overcommit. We are just trying to get like points here and there. And we threw in some hex races to clear off a couple of my, units of Marauders, who then murdered them like quite heavily in most cases. But I did kill them with reflected mortal wounds, and then like the powered up fireballs from the Wilder Fiends. So all was good. And then the game ended up kind of breaking my way for a couple of reasons. One, I was able to charge in on the flank with the Carcadrak Lord using his Conqueror's Crown to steal an objective to go on Fountains of
Nice.
Frost to more. Yeah, so I was ahead then. And I also was able to start moving up the board a bit to kind of put pressure on the objectives, and had a very lucky break where one of my wizards got off a blizzard and took one of those units of Blade Guys Revenants from like 20 down to like 7.
See, that's the thing where I was like, okay, how is he going to deal with this? Because I just in the last GT at Blue Sky GT,
Mhm.
that was the only list that stopped me. Um, out of the entire 5 game tournament, I only lost one game out of that, and it was to a list that was very close to that because I committed piecemeal, um, and even then, if you don't take those units out on the first try, they heal right back up, and
Yeah,
then you're just their recursion is nuts.
the recursion is just too crazy, and like they're way more durable than they really should be in
Mm-hmm.
your head if they're in their castle, because there's like those auras of -1 damage, so like that makes it much more survivable with your damage too, like clearers and stuff.
Yeah.
There's the like minus with a wound, or well, there's the the fact they always with the 4-up save, but there's that poof ability to give them the 5-up ward kind of on command,
Mm-hmm.
and you just got to finish them. So that's kind of what I did that turn. Like I got them down, and I had enough stuff, Wilder Fiends, whatever, in the middle, that I was able to get like the Darkoath, the Wilder Fiend in, the Chieftain in, a unit of the Marauders into the center objective, which had been priorly blocked, to fully
Nice.
kill that unit. Definitely get it dead, which I did, and then kind of be up there with a bunch of the swingy but still just individual characters. Then I was
Mm-hmm.
able to kind of like capitalize on that and control the battlefield. So even as he was running around with the Fiend, with the other unit of Blade Guys, and before they were eventually stopped, and capping points, and keeping it close, like that's how I managed to get that edge I needed. So I won, but again, not by much.
That's
Another
the
great game.
the that's the thing you always want to do, right? You take out a full unit, and then all of a sudden they're like your a Night Hunt player's face will just drop as soon as you take out their first large unit, right? Because they don't expect. Well, I guess they do expect it at some point, but anytime it happens, they're like, "Oh, this game is now different."
It's so true. It's so true. So so you kind of learn like the first time as the non-Nighthawk player that like something goes from 2 back to 10 like
Yep.
seemingly in the blink of an eye, and it's just as effective with its retreating and charging and flying, that like you just can't let that happen. So I've
Yeah.
been pretty focused on killing full units, and it worked out pretty well. But again, I was also challenged by, on my side, the fact that as much as I could bring stuff back or do crazy stuff, nothing was a true hammer. Nothing was going to take a hit. Anything of mine could evaporate. Characters, Wilder Fiends, whatever. The toughest
Yeah.
thing I have in the whole list is a Karkadrak Lord, and he's just a Karkadrak Lord, right? It's
Yeah. Karkadrak Lord just melts when it's up against like a full unit of blade guys. Revenants. They're just they're really good at killing characters like that. For like
100%.
multiple reasons, right? Just have them charge, have one other unit charge, and suddenly that Karkadrak Lord is now on a what like 4 and up save or 5 and up save.
It's
Um,
true. And like sometimes a unit like that, it's not swingy enough to swing the way you think it should, even though it kind of
mhm.
has it on paper. And it's not durable enough to survive the way you think it should, or even it statistically should, all the time. It's like it's kind of in that uncanny valley. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, even in this game, at one point, like I think I charged their Cruciator to try to just like, or maybe it was a Guardian of the Souls, just to kill it and get the general off the table.
Oh, and he had
And
Spirit Host by him.
no, he didn't have any Spirit Host by him. He was alone because I'd killed the Spirit
Oh.
Host, or they'd left or gone over somewhere else. And he failed to do enough damage to kill it, and then was blizzarded to death in return, or so, or killed somehow by something he did after that. And I'm like, well, like I can't rely on this this Dark Lord to be as 100% there as I wanted, but okay.
Yeah.
Like that was my experience with the tournament, so that this may be a lesson in this list composition, but he did his job there. He got me some points, and it worked out. So another one done. Got the end of day one. I was 2-1, hoping for some good stuff today.
Hmm.
Then I came here, early in the dawn, and was quite pleased to find that I had a chance to play against a friend and our Patreon subscriber, Eddie Carando, who is doing quite well in the ranks right now for for Slaves to Darkness might even be at the #1 seat at the moment in ITC.
Yeah, I think he posted that, and we're all just like, damn,
Yeah, it's like good
like
on him.
full Friday meme of damn.
It's so good. Love to see it. You know,
Yeah,
bring glory to yourself, Eddie, and of course to the channel
yes.
indirectly, you know,
Let
with
us
your
live by
exploits.
proxy in your and bask in your gloriousness.
Exactly, exactly. So we were quite psyched to finally get a match. We want to get one for a while. And it was really fun because we were doing a Slaves to Darkness versus Slaves to Darkness match off. And he had just a
Nice.
completely different list than the one that I had. And that was just a thing where you look at it and say, well, this is going to be pretty much the opposite of what, you know, I might have expected, you know, to be seen. Uh,
Hmm.
because it's well, maybe I should phrase that differently. It's the opposite. It's like the mirrored opposite of my list, where like I'm going the different direction of the new funny Darko Savager stuff, and he's bringing like a good stuff Slaves to Darkness list, and I'm like, all right, well, let's see how this all plays into like kind of like the dark mirror, and
Yeah.
you know, to give kind of like a quick idea of what he had. You know, he had like a lot of Erangard is essentially the theme. But Knight's Empty Throne, he had like a sorcerer as a spellcasting savant to be the general, the 3d6 charge spell, and like the familiar. He had
Hmm.
Be'lakor, he had some Corvus Cabal, he had some Untamed Beasts, he had 2 units of 10 Chaos Warriors with the Nurgle Mark, and then he
Nice.
had 6 Varangard with Khorne, 3 Varangard with Khorne, and 3 Ogroid Therodons with Khorne. So in a lot of ways, a list
Hey,
very
good
similar to the kind
style
of
with
stuff I
them
like to run.
Therodons.
Yeah,
Good
exactly.
solid choice on the Therodons.
And you know my feelings, Matt, on like on Vanguard. Like I have some, I
Mhm.
use them sometimes. I don't like to lean into them for lists the way some people do. I go other directions, but I respect them. They're great. They're
Yeah.
very dangerous. And I remembered I looked at his list like when I was trying to figure out who might be at the tournament like a couple of days beforehand or what they might be bringing. And the thought that popped in my mind was like, these are going to be really hard to reliably kill by pooping up mortal wounds because of the 4-up warp steel shield.
Yep.
But we'll see. This is going to be like the dice won't lie. So
It's it's kind of funny that dichotomy too, because like he had that's all of the tried and true Slaves to Darkness units in one list, right? Like
yeah,
that is a list that like no matter.
no chosen. There's no chosen in this list. So, yeah.
Yeah, chosen I feel like with the latest GHB are so much slower if you're not running Slanesh,
Slanesh,
right?
yeah, it's true. Very true.
So like unless you build into it, chosen just don't have the speed to keep up with some of the objective grabbing and the tacticals, right?
It's true.
Um but like it sounds like every unit in there is the solid, like tried, tested, like guaranteed, you know, ROI when it comes to playing a Slaves to Darkness book, which is awesome because they're dependable. Like every single one of those units is dependable at what you set them out to do.
It's exactly right. Well, it was quite the interesting game because you know it was the pulse, geometric pulse. So like not really with his precision movement Vanguard the
Hmm.
best one for me in this particular matchup, I think, but still
Yeah.
still totally fine. And we kind of got after it to see what could be done. And of course, you gave me first turn, and like I ultimately did that. He took his turn. Then I run the roll off and gave him the double, but he was being very cagey. I was being very cagey initially. I kind of
Hmm.
moved up to grab some in the middle, and it was yeah, kind of off to the races. Excuse me, because I think that's how it went down. Anyway, unless I misremembered, Eddie, correct me in the chat if I've somehow got any of that sequence wrong. But you know, we were being very cagey early part of the game, but it
Hmm.
came down to a couple kind of interesting things happening. One, he did get those Vanguard charged in and was doing like a whole bunch of damage and murdering stuff. and trying to really engage in multiple fronts, like with the Chaos Warriors on one flank and Vanguard on the other,
Hmm.
and did a ton of damage, wiped out like a lot of Marauders. I started throwing some Wilder Fiends into fight. They of course died. Had a good back and forth there. But then
Hmm.
a couple kind of highlight moments, as this was all going down and things were dying to both sides and in the usual ways. Him from just hitting real hard, me from summoning things back and being cagey or getting some swings in or fireballing stuff or charging in a weaker elements of Wilder Fiends. What ended up happening was on the plus side, the on the right hand flank, I just ran right up it with those javelin armed, fell riders because they have a funny oath ability where if they charge in on something and nothing else is nearby, if they do so, their rend on all the weapons becomes -2 instead of -1.
Which is
For like,
really good for them.
it's really good,
Yeah.
but they're also attached to these super swingy like bodies where their javelins are like fours and fours, one shot each to
Hmm.
do when they throw them to do rend minus whatever it is, -1 or -2, D3 damage. Or in combat, not counting the horses, which are generic 2 attack horses, they get 2 attacks at fours and fours for 1 damage with those javelins. So like super swingy,
Yep.
but decent volume. So first thing they do is they run up and they throw the javelins like a turn 1 on these Corvus Cabal have come down on where the right hand objective would be. I kill like 7 of them.
Oh, easy pickings. Easy
Yeah,
pickings.
easy pickings. Like the best possible target for these guys. The
Hmm.
only thing they can actually fight and destroy outside of a Skaven is, and not all Skaven, but like a basic clan rat is maybe other cultists. So they do that. And there are 3 of them left, and about 3 wounded cultists is about the only target I would trust them to reliably one shot. I thought in my head at the time, so I charge them in, they kill them, and now they're at rent 2.
Nice.
So then
So another,
the
they're scary to Varangard.
okay, well that's the thing is like the Vanguard are you have to imagine on the table here,
Yeah,
the
one
far
side
right
and then the other, right?
objective. Yeah, the Vanguard are kind of facing their 6 Vanguard, but there's an impassable like rock formation. And
Oh,
they're on the
okay.
right hand side of the rock formation away from the Vanguard. And ahead of them is just the Untamed Beasts. And the Untamed Beasts, I might be misremembering how the turn sequence actually went from there, but it ended up being that they were the next victim of the riders because for whatever reason they did not engage with the riders, and I was able to throw javelins at them and then charge them at my next opportunity, and I killed all of them except for one who eventually went down later. And so then, as the rest of the battle progressed and everything was engaged for turn 3, they were up there, and I was facing the Sorcerer Lord on his own, who was a spellcasting savant, over the corner, and he was naked, but
Nice.
for a 5-up ward he'd gotten with like a battle tactic, lust for power, rolling out of God's table.
Hmm.
And I threw my javelin and killed the remaining dude, and then I made like the long bomb charge to get at the sorcerer. And at this point, the sorcerer was already going to be somewhat exposed because Wilder Fiend or things coming back and maybe get to him and
Hmm.
definitely want to kill them. But these guys are there, and you would think they would take him out. And oh boy, did they completely fail to do so over the course of 3 turns of like maybe
Oh.
losing one every turn or so from like the combat back and forth, but like
Hmm.
all those Rend 2 javelin attacks, all of the thrown javelin attacks, a lot of like all of the attacks to try to make it happen, all of the hooves. It was just comedy. Like the sorcerer did not go down. And good on him. And to Eddie's complete credit, he did everything right, I think, to make that sorcerer survive. Like all out defenses or bring it to the 3-up before the round.
Hmm.
All, like finest hour in one of those turns, but like
Maybe an errant mystic shield or something as well.
I don't recall if you put a Mystic Shield on him. I don't think you did. Maybe you did, but I will say that one way or another, this guy survived quite a bit more punishment than statistically I've ever thought a Sorcerer Lord
Nice.
would. And
So,
that's fine. It's a dice game and they're very swingy. But it was very funny, like how these guys like had such a good early run and then melted at their final boss.
just slowly lost momentum.
Yeah, they really did. So it was funny, like so that happened. Then of course, like the Vanguard on the one flank ended up being hyper successful to 6-man. Like I got him into 4 and killed a couple of them, but the Karkadrack Lord had tried to be cute and charge in on the back end to pin them while they were
Mhm.
fighting a War Queen on the other side. And, you know, 2 or 3 of them were still able to turn around and fight him. And even without like having charged, they just bopped at him. And he just, I think he had like 5 saves and he failed
Just
4 of them. It's
just
just
fell
like,
over and died.
just fell over and died, even with the Nurgle like protections, for those attacks,
Oh,
and then like I think one horse just killed him, but you're dead. So all of a sudden I went from like 2 things here and a pin to no things here, and like they were able to kind of run more amok, which made the game very tough. But long story short, we made it cagey, all the same, bringing guys back, running them around. Where's the Wilder Fiend? What's dying to that? Led to quite a lot of attrition in the Chaos Wars and other parts of the battlefield, and for a real nail biter of a game. He still had tons
nice.
of pieces left, and I was kind of stringing together like points and things. But ultimately, because of like that collapse in the right and the geomantic pulse, I got a lot of points. From the end of the game, he'd gotten his Vanguard everything needs to go on that side to kill stuff and keep that objective. And I just
Mhm.
didn't have like the right positioning to get the bodies to take back that objective. And so he was kind of capitalizing there, and it ended up being actually that sorcerer lord surviving sort of against all odds, all that abuse that meant that I got my grand strat and he got his grand strat rather than failing it. And that's what changed that from a tie to a win for him by 3 points.
That's amazing. That sounds like a super fun game.
Oh, it was great. It was great. And we grabbed a slice of pizza afterwards in the lunch break, and we're just kind of talking about like, like kind of solving the puzzles in the list and how fun it is to kind of see the 2 variants going after each other and little things you could have done differently. But yeah, it was a blast. I think that you know, definitely, as they all do, came down to some interesting dice turns, but I really enjoyed seeing like the steel of 9 Vanguard against a bunch of like murder cultists and seeing how these different philosophies of chaos worked out there.
I feel like after that game, he has to most definitely convert the Chaos Sorcerer. It needs a new skull or like a
I,
little
I think so
medal.
too. Like that guy needs a promotion.
Yeah,
Also, Eddie, if you're listening
he
to
earned it.
this, great game. That was such a blast, and I'm really get a chance to do that. Also, I mentioned this to Miles earlier. I think we need to introduce a new thing to the channel. Maybe a bit of a side apropos of nothing thing here, Matt, but
Mhm.
we need to get for our Patreon members a sort of like a skull taker pin or something like that. And
Hmm.
I think what it should be is that we do the 3 mace ball heads. You've all designed, like one for me, one for you, one for Miles. And
Mhm.
every time one of our Patreon members beats one of us in a tournament somewhere, we have to send them the pin plus the correct ball head for the person they've gotten. And if you collect all 3, like an Infinity Stone or something,
You become
we
Voltron.
will you'll become Voltron, and we'll send you some cool prize, which we'll figure out, which will be significant enough to warrant the effort and be fun. So I'm just gonna say it. We're gonna do that. If you're cool with that, Matt, I think this is an always
Yeah.
strikes late move. All right, good. So
I
Eddie,
uh
we'll figure that out.
I got our button maker up and running, so I'm gonna start making some cool ones. I'd love to throw some of those out there. So that'll be
We'll do it.
awesome.
We'll do it. So Eddie, you are the inaugural winner of the first, I guess, mace head or pin element for
Yeah,
that. We'll figure it out.
we'll have to figure out a better name, right? Host this host skulls or something. I don't know.
Host skulls or mace skulls or something. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
we'll 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 workshop that. Don't.
I'm fine with it. We'll let's go full 80s on it. We'll get a little bit of cocaine, put ourselves in a room, come out with 400 ideas for the name,
This gonna end up being like the smiley face T-shirt or something.
Yeah, yeah.
80s
It'll be
style, but
the
that's
smiley face t-shirt
it.
with like only, like a black eye or something, right? Over one of them.
Exactly. All right. A couple more things to share on this tournament journey. I don't want to don't want to lose too much steam on it. So let me power through to the final game and then just sort of like a quick rundown of like the ones who won the tournament, like the top five, and how would that look like? It was pretty interesting as
Sounds
this
great.
third edition meta closes out.
And
So my final game,
side note though, don't do cocaine, people, unless you
yeah,
want to, but it's illegal. So like it's bad for you also. Also,
listen
it's
to what
bad for
Matt
the
is telling you.
environment. It's bad for the
Yes,
environment. I am not endorsing the use of any illegal substances.
he's definitely not doing that, even though it probably sounded a bit more in the gray area 10 minutes ago or 4 minutes ago, whatever it was.
It sounded in the gray area in the past, but we're in the future now.
Yeah, yeah. All right, all right. We're glad we cleared that up.
Yes, yes. PSA: do not do illegal substances. Por favor.
Exactly. All right. So my final game will against this great dude from Tough Crowd named Thomas Lang, who I had a chance to meet for the first time today, and had a real pleasure to have a great game with him. And man, it was a blast.
Nice.
Really fun dude. Thomas, you end up listening to this. Thanks again for the great game. But I will say that I was playing his Sylvaneth, and it was such a really like engaging and positive and intense game for a
Yeah.
couple reasons. One, Thomas himself is a very energetic, intense person, like a great way. So
Hmm.
it's just you're kind of on a roller coaster of fun, and I really enjoyed that. We're kind of having like a lot of like great banter back and forth, and like really celebrating the good and the bad moments. I kind of get into the
Nice.
game. And the second, of course, he's playing like a really great cagey game with Sylvaneth. It's like not like, oh, here's Sylvaneth, let me run him out in the middle or something. It's like, no, pulling teeth to get anything done against them, strikes and fades, has scary stuff in that list, and it's all painted like beautifully. Kind of like, his and Rise armies are painted beautifully. I
Yeah.
should just a callback. Riot actually painted every sword in that Lumineth army with like a pink and kind of white crystalline kind of like
Ooh. Like some
edged
kind of
pattern.
prism looking thing
Yeah,
or
but done like painstakingly well, not like with each panel, not like you just like
nice.
highlight the edges after you paint it one color. It was really good. And honestly, Thomas's army was gorgeous. Like it was a pleasure to be murdered by those models, or to murder them in turn. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, so we sit down, and this one was really interesting for me for a couple reasons. One, Thomas likes to use the chess clock because it's easier to track time for him, with all the stuff he's got to do. And asked if we could do it. So that's fine. Absolutely. But of course, I'm sweating bullets because like I have like this giant horde army. Like not be slow. And it was great though, because I managed to keep it to time and like move all my stuff and do all my stuff and had time left at the end of the game. So it actually worked really well. And I was really glad to have had that experience. You know,
I I have been using chess clocks for the past 7 months. Now, granted, I haven't been playing as much tournaments, but like they have helped so much in just like making the right decision and learning to rely on the plan that you had when you started the game. Like I am all about chess clocks now.
they're so good just
Or
for making
again.
you make a decision, or
Hmm.
get something done. I mean, I definitely think sometimes like they probably encourage like broken models and like fat fingering of things, but like for the most part, I can see the benefit. It definitely changes a little bit like the stress level of what's going on, though,
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
given
most
moment.
definitely.
Yeah. But I digress. So we were doing for the final mission, every step is forward or whatever that one is, where like you count extra if you charge, or you don't count if you
Yep.
retreat. And he was bringing, like I said, the Sylvaneth. They were in Heartwood, so a bunch of tree peoples. He had an Arch Revenant, Belthanos, a Warsong Revenant, doing the Warsong Revenant thing, a Branch
Hmm.
Witch with Merciless Blizzard, then 6 Kurnoth Hunters with Great Bows, 5 Tree Revenants, 6 Kurnoth Hunters with Kurnoth Greatswords, 10 Dryads, and 5 Spite Revenants, and that was it. But of course, strike and fade, strike and fade, strike and fade.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, with the
so
swords most likely is my guess.
yep. I mean, he was doing the strikes and fades with swords, and he was trying to like assassinate or kill things with the bows, and
Hmm.
it made for kind of like an interesting game. So he made me go first, right? Then we're playing KG. He came in, he like murdered one unit of like my guys, took some mortal wounds in return, teleported away. Of
Hmm.
course, he can immediately put a tree back or something with his abilities. I'm not, so it's not like I've done like a lot of damage. And
Yeah.
then, you know, the only thing I did is like it's kind of funny, like 4 objectives and like a Tetris pattern, right? So I managed to get my 5, and I was sitting on objectives where he just couldn't get 2 and more. So it was like 5 and 4, 5 and 4, 5 and 4, like the whole game pretty much. So I was
Oh,
slowly bleeding him, you know, in points. And I sort of finally got some momentum shift because I got the priority roll into the second turn and I gave him the double because I
ooh.
knew all he was going to be able to do is come kill the unit Marauders, really.
Hmm.
And I plopped down some more Marauders to screen like my characters and in places that I was more worried about. And it kind of was what happened. And you know, had all these Wilder Fiends charged up with like nothing to shoot their fireballs at because he's not leaving anything within 18 inches of it for the most part.
Yeah.
So then, you know, it comes to, you know, bottom of 2, and I'm able to, this is kind of funny, like summon a Wilder Fiend back 12 inches up from a character, which means it can then move and charge into like the block of dryads and like and heart and bow people, the Kurnoth great bows. And I
Hmm.
also made use of the ability with the javeliners where they made their charge in and they shut off the, you know, the stand and shoot because they make it a 6 to hit them if you want to do it. So it's kind of nothing anymore. So I was able to get like them charged in, and of course, hilariously, everything else failed their charge. Like it was like an easy charge for these other ones to get in. They just flopped it like double ones from like
That's
the
how
Wilder
it
Fiend.
goes.
And
That's
I
how
had
it
a
always goes.
reroll charge from like 10, like 9 inches away with a 3d6 charge from a K-Lord. Totally failed it. I'm like, what? But I got
So
the
I think
double
he's
turn.
dropping. He's dropping from the list, right? Because it sounds like
He
poor
is
guy was.
he was always the part like I kind of fit in to do a certain thing, but I think he does drop when I rework it. There's this stuff I want instead. Um,
Hmm,
but we'll see. We'll see. In this case, though, you know, I got the double, so I was able to be like, let's try that again, you know, rinse and repeat. And they did all
nice.
get in, and I dumped all these fireballs, so I moved everything up over there to kind of take all those objectives, burn down a lot of those trees, and of killing all the dryads, killing most of the trees peoples, and then like kind of just sitting on the objectives in a couple places. I was like racking up more points, fives and fives and fives, and getting my stuff all spread out everywhere, as you want to do. Of
Hmm.
course, the teleporting shenanigans continue. There's still a Belthanos out there. There's still a, you know, whatever you call them, like a Warsong Revenant out there, who's
Yep.
like the general, and there's Spellcasting Savant.
So
But
yeah, spellcasting savant was the grand strat, right?
it was. And I really
Yeah.
want to kill him for that. I mean, actually, it was funny because later on, as it progressed, um, you know, Thomas kept, you know, moving stuff around and killing some of my things. I killed some of his stuff back. Belfins got involved, and of course, was hitting like a ton of bricks. But I
Hmm.
kept bringing stuff back. I kept bringing more stuff back, and it would kill stuff. The Wilder Fiends would pop up in funny places because I had at one point gotten from the 3 to the 4 Wilder Fiends, and then you know a hero would die, and I'd roll the 2 up, and it'd be like all of a sudden they're there, and so I sort of started this game of cat and mouse where at one point I had a Wilder Fiend had been summoned behind the branch with, and all these others moved up. So there were 3 Wilder Fiends sort of like creeping up you know, from different
Nice.
directions on the Warsong Revenant, which you know was
That's
menacing
never
for
what
him.
you want happening to your Warsong Revenant, right? Like in
It,
general.
exactly. So it was a real fun game, but at the end of the day, like we were getting down to the wire and like just kind of this like hilarious board state where he had a lot of stuff left, a lot of damage he was doing, but I literally had a couple units each in all of the board corners, and then I'd summoned more to make it so that I was everywhere. I kept
Hmm.
capping tactics, so I never got less than 4 points on a tactic on a turn. All my tactics plus many objectives, and I wasn't going to fail my grand strat. And so I got the grand strat. He made it tighter than it might otherwise have been, but trying to stop that from happening, but I still got it. And then I ended up winning by like, you know, 3 points or something like that. It was like,
Nice. That sounds like a good slew of like close, fun games.
Yeah, it really was, and total blast. Like I said, nerve-wracking, very interesting list to play. With these dark oaths, different in some ways than the other builds I have because it never kills anything decisively.
Hmm.
It's sort of this, unless they do like all certain things and play right into it. It's more like it dies and comes back and dies and comes back and comes back in different directions and like force you deal it 70 ways and then death by 1,000 cuts till it wins by like some reasonable margin, but not like
Yep.
a blowout, which is actually, kind of made it a bad list for this particular tournament because this was a differential system where you were
Oh.
getting 20 if you blew someone out or they conceded and didn't show up at the table. But if you had victories like I got, you're getting like 12 or 13 points. So that was kind of the interesting mix. I was getting 12 or 13 points. On the positive side, if I won, or sorry, I mean, I guess on the negative side, only that if I won,
Hmm.
because I wasn't like tabling people in turn two. But on the losses, they were always so close. I mean, like pretty much both of them that we described were like a die roll or one sort of circumstance away from being ties, as we discussed. And a small loss is still 8 points, still 7 points. And that
Hmm.
was really interesting. I think this list is pretty good at keeping it tight. But also that meant that I wasn't, blowing it out to the top of each, like a win-loss bracket, with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that differential scoring has always been kind of a because that was the 20-point system, right?
It is, and it's such a difference
It's
maker,
always
honestly.
like that one always kind of hurts just a little bit because yeah, it doesn't kind of respect the close games that are just as hard, if not harder, wins that you get, which I feel are the better games. Like that's a more fun game to support, right? Is
It
like
it
I want
forces
the
your list
game
building,
where
yeah.
it's well, yeah, it definitely forces your list building, but it also like forces the
Hmm.
style of play of okay, I've got to kill you right off, and so I have an overwhelming victory, which I never find is a very fun experience, either to do to my opponents or to have done to me. Like I love the description of all of your games that were so close, right? Like that's
Well,
a more fun Warhammer.
I think so too, and it made for really, excuse me, memorable, entertaining, like engaging games. So I'm really happy I played them all that way. But yeah, it didn't do me any favors at points in terms of that stuff. I mean, and I
Mm-hmm.
guess it's funny to me because when they do it this way, certainly I could have made a different list build choice taking that into account. So that's on me too. But at the top of like the 3-2 bracket, I think it would be like that'd be ninth place. But I was in 20th because of my like low
Yeah, your
scores. Yeah, well,
center
I was
scores.
like 20 out of 50 rather than like ninth or
Oh,
10th or 11th out of 50.
I mean on the differential, you were center scores, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Like I
Yeah,
get my
for a win.
extras, but I wouldn't get like that blowout for a 20, and that
Yeah,
is like a whole extra game's worth of points in some of these. It's pretty funny. So
yeah,
definitely good, but something to consider. And you go to a different tournament where they're not doing it that way. I mean, I had a 24 to 25 battle tactics and all my grand strats. So like
like that's really good.
yeah, like I didn't drop a lot. So it's in some ways not it's sort of deceptive, what it does to
Yeah,
the
I'd say
scores.
almost bittersweet in a way, right? Because you have these
Yeah, yeah.
amazing games, and then it's like, wait a minute, why is it that low?
It's
I
totally fair. I
I guess
regret
the
nothing though. I regret nothing. This
oh
is
no
super
no no, it
fun.
sounds like it was an amazing time. I'm more thinking of like the TO in the back of my head is going, okay, so that sounds like there's a better fix out there for that somewhere, you know? Um, but but if you were to just go by points, by scoring, that's when you end up with like the fifth round or the sixth or the seventh round qualify like you know
The shadow
late
docket or whatever. Yeah,
games,
yeah.
yeah. And that sounds just as miserable from a different perspective. So
Well, it's always something like whatever the tiebreaker is. I mean, I remember there was an RTT that I got second place in, who I 3
mhm.
0 like a couple months ago. And I think the difference between me and a friend of mine who got in first place was that he had we put tied in everything, like all the same number of battle tactics and grand strats, but he had a slightly stronger strength of schedule by like a fraction of a point or something. And
That's
that
yep.
was a difference maker for like 1 and 2. And you always got to choose something. That's very fair.
Hmm.
The last thing I want to kind of highlight on this excellent event, again, calling out the great work the Wicked Dicey folks did to put together, and saying anyone who hasn't had a chance to go to one of these should. I just want to call out the top 5 who did it there, because there's some pretty interesting lists here. First, this is funny. First place, man, you may know, Jeremy Vessier.
Oh,
Yep,
expected since he was there. Hmm.
yep.
Always a tip of the hat. Oh my
And
goodness, what a good player.
great guy, great player, great game, as I say. But
Hmm.
uh, another great guy, great player, great game. Jiwon Noah Singh was second, and I'm going to list them together because they effectively had the same list. They were playing Flesh Eater Courts, Blisterkin, Grand Court.
Ah, those
Yeah,
flesh eater courts are just scary. They're so scary. They're hard to deal with.
it's interesting. I mean, I guess they're not identical, but it's so similar to me. So just listen to this. So Blisterskin, right?
Hmm.
I think Jeremy's was an abhorrent Archregent, another abhorrent Archregent, another abhorrent Archregent. Everyone's got their Merciless Blizzard, by the way. An abhorrent Ghoul King also is Merciless Blizzard. A Mirror Scroll Herald. 2 units of 20 Crypt Ghouls and 3 Crypt Players for the battle line. The Chalice of Shorin. Then 1 unit of 20 Crypt Guard and 2 units of 20 Royal Beast Players. So keep that in your brain. Now let's go to the completely different list from Noah. Abhorrent Archregent, Abhorrent Archregent, Mirror Scroll Herald, Abhorrent Archregent. Only one Merciless Blizzard here, so it is not the exact same. It was
Okay,
misquoted.
okay.
But then 3 Crypt Players, 2 units of 20 Crypt Ghouls, Chalice for Shorin, 2 units of 20 Beast Players, 20 Crypt Guard, and then 10 additional Royal Beast Players. So like close variants and the same sort of idea. And it's really interesting that, I mean, obviously those guys are both extremely talented.
Yeah,
So no
they're
surprise there, but the same type of list, 1, 2. It's really great.
yeah, and that's it's just it's so interesting how like spammable that army feels as far as like min max not min maxing, but just same units over and over, rinse and repeat kind of style of play of like, oh, well, you killed them. Okay, well, here's a bunch of them back, and we're back in. And
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's that kind of almost rinse and repeat, wear you down while also having some extremely good spiky behavior. And because
Yeah.
they can last so long, the spikes like really add up over time, I think.
I think so too. And I think there's also some interesting mechanics there with just how good the Royal Beast players are for like shutting
Yeah.
down monsters, monstrous rampages, and the fact that you have some models in there that are like, I have 3 wounds or 2 wounds to do all this damage, but I also come back for 1 point of of like recursion.
Yeah.
So yeah, super cool. I mean, I had a great chance to say hello to those guys, chat with them a little bit, but I didn't have the time to see any of their games. So I'm sure they're really exciting, and there's probably some great moments in there. The third place list you would get such a kick out of because it is Stormcast, and James O'Brien brought this
Hmm.
pretty amazing Stormcast list. All right, get ready for this.
All right. Lay it
These are
on me.
just like Thunderbolts kill you. That's what I nicknamed this list in my head. It's a Lord Imperator as a general, Master of Magic and Arcane Tomb. Then 5 Knight Vexilors with Meteoric Standards.
Ah, it's a jack list. That's a jack list.
Jack Ballard.
Jack
Nice.
Ballard. Yeah.
Yep. Then his bad line were 3 sets of 3 Annihilators and Meteoric Grand Hammers. Then he rounded it
Oof.
out with 4 Stormstrike Chariots and Everblaze Comet. So this is just
Oh,
like if you have a lot of stuff in a packed area at any time within
they're
like
dead.
24 inches, it's just like calls in like the nuke on them or like
Hmm.
so many mortal wounds with radiuses right there. And then,
And then
obviously,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead. You go ahead, man.
And you said Lord Imperator, right? So
Yep.
that's 7-inch charges from all the hammers. Those kind of like just hit your big unit. Uh, No, those are like the perfect ways to break a
Castle, right?
yeah, any castle or any like Death Star style list. Like I honestly don't really have too much problems with those lists because I do that equal threat play,
Mhm.
but those are so scary. I never put together the Lord Imperator Annihilator combo until it got just until a list just walked all over me. And that's scary enough. But the Vexillors are hilariously good for their points cost because you're just like, take some wounds, take some wounds.
It's exactly that, and like with this many of them, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in the right situation, it's like okay, if you have a moving castle or a castle, you can't like literally get across the board, and you have a number of pieces that have to stay in some kind of configuration. Pick anywhere to get 5d3 mortal wounds, like basically like orbital blizzard.
Yeah. And that'll
And
bring down like dragons, for
then
with that comboed in with a one unit of annihilators coming down, and then storm strike chariot, at least just one charging for the mortal wounds there. Like that poops mortal wounds.
oh my God, yeah. And doesn't the Everblaze Comet like not have a range? Can you just like cast it from the back of the board?
It's actually it's deceptive. It's got a I think it's a 32
36. I was looking
or
it up.
36, yeah. So basically, like it's one of the few things that you can use to break up a castle early on, and the only thing that it's dependent on is you just rolling your dice. Now, there's no way to stop it if you are able to deploy correctly. So it's
It's
really cool in that way, but it's also like I've never been able to make it work very well after because it lost its pulse. It used to pulse every turn
Mhm.
afterwards. Now it just pulses once, does its damage, and then makes it so that your opponent has -1 to cast, which is admittedly still really good if you place it down in like a slow moving
Mhm.
castle. So it's really good. Every time somebody uses it against me, always hurts, but it's too
Yeah.
static for me. Doesn't move enough. It's got to
It
move.
does have that, but I don't know. For him, it just feels like in this list, it's like the nuclear on top of the nuclear because you have all the others. You have the
Mm-hmm.
radius wounds from like the meteoric grand hammers dropping down 7, gives you a 10-inch bubble, whatever. Yeah, this is like mortal wounds on mortal wounds, plus all those chariots, with like the reroll and the charges or whatever from the standards too. So it's really cool, like list against the wrong matchup. And I bet it oppressed many a person.
Yeah, it's super super techy. Something I've kind of run into quite a bit out here.
Mhm.
So it's a fun list to go against. It's so slow once everything is down because those chariots they don't last that long because they actually don't have elite, so you have to babysit them if you want them um, to like take any hits from something with rend.
Or do
So
any
like
command
there's a
points, yeah.
couple of caveats with it, but yeah, that sounds like a really fun list. Also, it's nice to see chariots on the board. I don't run into
Yeah,
many of those lately.
I just thought it was real cool. It obviously worked out pretty well for James.
Yeah, that's
Last
rad.
two,
I
last
love
two.
seeing Stormcast higher up.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat. You love to see it, except for Sigmar lied, so you don't. But it's just neat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they
So,
don't even love to see it because Sigmar lied, right?
that's true. They're coming around.
Yeah.
Fourth was Ben Moley doing Ogremont tribes. This you love to see. And
Hmm.
I like his list, but it actually seems just wholesome and refreshing to me. Like I'm just happy that he did so well with it. It was Meat Fist, Spellcasting Savant, Slaughtermaster, the Gruesome Trophy Rack and Horfrost, Firebelly Billionaire Ash, a Frost
Hmm.
Lord with Rockmane Elder, two Blood Pelt Hunters, which are the tricky techie, and then Battle Line, 2 units of Iron Guts, just 240, so 4 mans, Ogre Gluttons, 1 base unit size, then an Iron Blaster and a unit of Noblize. I'm like, all
Oh,
right,
okay. Yeah, good, solid board control. It's gonna be
great
hard to get
damage and
in
everything,
there.
but yeah.
refill the pot to heal up the wizard halfway through if you can't get a heroic action off. Yeah, that's a good, just solid beat 'em up list. That's
The
like one of the, remember that one tournament we were talking about where it was just we were reviewing the top, I think it was five or top 10, and we're like,
mm-hmm.
was that Worlds? I think it may have been Worlds, the finish
Mighty
list,
Worlds, yeah.
where it was just like, wow, everything is no nonsense. We've come here to beat your life up and do it, without any tricks. I like it.
Straightforward and great. Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I love Iron Guts. I use them in my ogres too, so they're
Yeah,
near and dear to my heart.
they're all scary. That
Oh
does
yeah.
get real scary.
So good on you, Ben, for that. Awesome to see it. And the last list, just to round the top five. This one I was laughing at, and I think it's great. A buddy of mine, a guy that I played once or twice before, named Sean Cushing. I think he might listen to the channel as well. So Sean, if you're listening, great job for your 4-1 and for fifth in the tournament. Sean was playing Night Haunt the Scarlet Doom as well. But this list was a little different from the other one that I played. You ready for this, Matt?
Lay it on me.
All right. A Guardian Souls with the Ruler of the Spirit House, a Chillblade, the Penitent Fell Wind, Merciless Blizzard, Kurdos Valentian.
Ooh, Kurdos.
Yeah, Kurdos. And then Nagash as the leader. And then 5 units of 10 Blade Geist Revenants. Done.
So Nagash just nuking whatever he goes into, while Kurdos, actually, I can't even remember what Kurdos does. I have him. I think I've used him once. Just a lot of Scarlet Doom. Wow, and not even that much recursion, maybe, other than Nagash.
Other than Nagash, the Nagash's recursion, I guess, is pretty horrendous against chip damage, right? Because it's like 3 models for every unit within 24 inches of him.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably why you min max, right?
Yeah, that's right. And he can bring back a unit. And I think there's a spell on the other guy to bring back D6 wounds worth of a unit. So something down to like 3 would be back to 10 between the two of them.
Yeah.
And then I think Kurdos Valentian's like a little okay in fighting, and he can like jealously reduce the command points your opponent gets.
He's a beat stick. He's like deceptively better just because he can survive a little bit longer than you expect him to. Just looking at his stats, it's just, I'm actually going to pull him up while you like think about what he can do versus what he actually does. I think he just throws out. Yeah, he's 5 attacks at 3 across the board, right? So -3 rend, damage 3.
Yeah.
So like he will beat up a unit that goes into him. And like the 5 and up take away a command point is all right. But like if he gets anywhere near a Night Haunt buff or debuff, like he becomes this kind of like not unkillable, but just like, if I don't solve this problem, it will slowly eat away through anything I have. Like low armor save armies. Like I would never want to run my Paladors into it, or Dragon Ogres would slowly get blended,
100%. I mean, that makes sense to me, and I'm really curious to talk to Sean about some of his games and kind of like his experiences with it, because it's a fun looking list. But like, there's things in here like I'm not sure like what his methodology was with Nagash, what he was going for. Like I guess for him to use Hand of Dust, he actually has to be fighting some Nagash, right? Because he does those.
I think so. I can double check here, but
yeah,
I always fear the one giant model problem, right? Like Monster Hero Hammer is so scary to me.
Well, I agree. That's what I think it was just last episode. I was lamenting that experience with Archeon, where I brought him as sort of like my pseudo spoiler to play in the RTT because we need the extra guy, and I wanted to make sure everyone was having games, and he makes you sweat. Any of them make you sweat because they can fluff anything, and then all those points are just not working for you.
Yep. Yeah. They're either go bigger. They're definitely go big or go home. So yeah, I really admire the players who take them, and because it's a lot of skill to throw down and do it well, right?
I think so. I think Nagash definitely, at least in terms of like the big god models, at least he has like global aura effects or like abilities to affect a lot of things at once. Like just like sitting there and bringing back hypothetically 15 blade guys for Evan Knights a turn.
Hmm.
It's like worth a lot of points. So it's
And then like also he's I think can he still do his just endless arcane bolt or yeah,
I
arcane bolt.
I don't think he can do that anymore. I had that in my head too, but I was looking him up recently. I'm gonna pull him up again now just because it was such an interesting moment to be like, what does his turn look like with Nagash? Because I haven't had Nagash in my collection, so I always have to like just kind of go off of secondhand memory. And I had
Oh
remember
yeah.
that being a
Yeah,
thing.
you should be able to, unless it's been faxed somewhere.
Where does it say that? I'm just curious.
So it would be it's actually in two, well, kind of three different areas. So
Mhm.
first he's got the wizard keyword, and that's uh the spells that he can choose is dependent on the army that he's taken
Yep,
in.
yep.
Um, Obviously he's a war master, but if you look at his damage table, one of the damage effects is the amount of spells he can cast,
Cast up to 8, yep.
as well as the range. So like you can cast up to 8 spells, and when you've got like +3 to casting, unbinding, and dispelling, it's pretty guaranteed that he's going to get stuff off. Now, that being said, I've had a bunch of Nagash players just completely blow themselves up on the second or third cast, um, which is always sad
Oh yeah.
because it happens at the beginning of the game and they're just like, no, and then I charge into them, and either get all my units picked up or somehow just manage to pick up Nagash. But they're yeah, I think they can still do up. He can still do up to 8 arcane bolts if he wants,
See, that's the
which is
thing.
terrifying. That's so terrifying.
Maybe that's still the case. Because I was looking at the app War Scroll, and it doesn't say that anywhere on there. But I could have sworn it could do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just he can cast up to 8 spells. Oh, maybe they did change the wording so that he has to. So, you guys, this is where you get your always strikes late timing, where we get to go through the rules in a very laxadaisical and
That's
muted,
true.
tired fashion.
Really important information too, because in a month it will be completely different. Or
Hey,
so.
maybe if it helps anybody. Um, yeah, I don't honestly know. Unbind any. Yeah, I don't honestly know.
Well, that's not a worry. I mean, he's good in other ways, right? I guess in Sean's list, he's given 5 up wards and a bubble. He's doing the
Hmm.
recursion. He hits like a ton of bricks anyway if you just use him that way. And he does have a pretty strong combat profile.
Yeah, I mean he's literally a god when it comes to like what he can actually do. I mean the Alakanash being D6 damage is still kind of hilarious when he can get shot by an ogre cannon that does a reliable uh plus random. I'll oh, that thing still makes me sad every time I get shot
Oh
with it.
yeah, I get it. Still,
I
I
know
bet
they
you like
toned it down with the points increase, but oof, that's one of the scarier things out there.
still all out attacking with him. They were doing like twos and threes,
Oof,
-3, 46. Like, yeah,
oof.
maybe you get 4, maybe you get 18. It's a pretty good.
Yeah,
And with a Zeph Nepter and the Spectral Claws in the backup, it's all good. But
yeah.
anyway, so that was the grand journey. Pretty fun time. Some cool lists. Great environment to see different people trying out different stuff at the end of the edition, and not a bad showing for the Darkoath's first and only tournament stage entry before they transform into whatever they're going to be for that solid 3-2.
So you got any predictions on what you think you were going to see or what you'd like to see? Because I know we're gonna have some changes, and we're we can have our fun predicting. we're not reading war scrolls. People, you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
eyeballs, and for people who don't have eyeballs, you have earballs. Somebody else will read them out to you. We
Well,
don't need to do that.
I feel like, not to go over like what everything's gonna do, but maybe just to stick to the Dark Oath idea. I think
Oh
they're
yeah, just
gonna
Darkoath. Just
Dark
Darkoath.
Oath. They're so close to the pin, like with where they release these and what they're before they like, I guess like the event horizon we're approaching.
Hmm.
The only two things are probably released after them that aren't closer to this, like, why did you make rules right now kind of moment, are like the new Abraxia and like the Gunner Brand like special unit. So they
The
really have to be similar. I think they have to create a tight thematic connection where Wilder Fiends are kind of Wilder Fiending, Dark
hmm.
Oaths are doing oaths. If anything, I just hope it makes like some of the units themselves a bit more enticing for like what they can do when they fulfill their oaths for how they perform beyond like being Chow for the Wilder Fiends or glorious, Death Seekers and all that. But it's
a little bit more tactical
I
flexibility, you think?
yeah, so, but very much on the theme. I think they probably, hopefully, wrote this recently enough that they were able to say, yeah, this is how it's going to jump after that transition point. Because, I know their production cycles
Yeah.
are a little bit ahead of time.
Well, and it's interesting because what we had the Soulblight Gravelords book, the first one that got released right before third, and it had third edition interaction rules in it, right?
Yep,
So we
yep.
had like a month or two of just like, the blood dragons really actually do that, or blood knights really actually do that. That doesn't make any sense the way the rules are written. Um, I wonder if there's some of that in there. Like I look at the Abraxia or scroll, which is amazing, and it solves the problem that I have with my all knights list. Like I
Mhm.
am going to get an all slaves to darkness knights list, uh, so I can use Abraxia's, pick 3 units, and they all get the same command, right? So all
Mhm.
out attack suddenly turns all of those 4-ups to hit into 3-ups to hit, striking immediately after the Lord that's charged in. Just wipe the floor with whatever is in front of them, kind of style. But like her War Scroll, I think, did have a 4-up save, and everybody was like, "That's insane," because it's essentially a chaos warrior on a monster, which you
Mhm.
would expect to have a 3-up save because she's not a wizard, or at least I don't think she is. But like that kind of stuff, I think maybe we're catching a little bit of forewarning that hey, the big stuff is not going to be as oppressively tough. I mean, unless it's God, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. That there might be a closing to the gap, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I know we're not going to dive into the articles right now. That's what we've been avoiding, but these teasers, just as a general rule, they're burying the lead a little bit. There's something more which makes it all make sense, and that'll probably be in
Yeah.
the rule book. If only someone would send us a preview copy of the rule book, we could
We
opine a
could
little
do
bit.
like a full review. We could put the whole set together, paint it, show it off. We
Yeah.
could force Miles to bring it to Worlds. No, we can't.
No,
We can't actually
no,
do that.
no, I
But
can't. But we could encourage him to
but we
paint
could
anything.
try.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Um, but yeah, give me crow models for free. Give them now. I'm a
100%.
Baltimore Ravens fan, my friends. Give me all my crows and ravens that I can get. Give them to me
Well,
now.
they were quite unfair to all the people who dressed up like crows and ravens. Let us just say. So we lose some love somewhere.
That
Corvus Cabal.
well, I mean, now they're just Dark Oath under a different base size, right?
Uncomfortably different base sizes. I mean,
The point five, 28.5, right? I have the box. I still haven't even looked and
yeah.
compared the bases
Oh,
because I'm still just like confused about it.
28.5s, yes. And I'll tell you
Nice.
what, giving new life to cool old Marauder models, converting banners, and like, like musician stuff, which was fun to make sure I had 3 full units. That's all good, but the rebasing of 60 of them onto 28.5s was really annoying.
Yeah, it's like old world all over again, right?
Exactly.
Oh man, or transition from fantasy to Age of Sigmar back to old world, which I am in the process of doing right now. I'm still like trying to hold the hope that I have the patience to get my Beasts of Chaos on back on to rectangular bases now. Otherwise, it's just like, oh man, I can't play these knowing they're not going to get any support. Can't
uh
do it.
Matt, you know what I'm gonna say? You can do the whole rebase if you want, or you can just get like a whole bunch of movement trays. You put the circle base guys in, it doesn't matter.
That's true. That's true. I think I think though, like from what it sounds like, if Darkoath do keep that play style, that is exactly the play style that I love. Just teasing, teasing, and playing with your opponent, popping up in areas where they either expect it and you set it up so they're going to have to deploy to try and stop
Mhm.
that. So you can find another area that you can just break through. That kind of play is to me the most like fun and rewarding. It bleeds into all the armies I play.
It's true. Well, I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see what comes of it.
Yeah.
If this Wilder Fiend shenanigans continue to be encouraging of many Wilder Fiends to do a 5th one in the box somewhere, so it'll be maybe we can really go down that rabbit hole if we need
I
to.
mean, by all means, all of your conversions look great. So, um, yeah, yeah, I'm excited for that army. I hope it keeps the flavor going. And
Yeah, me too. Oh, well, good stuff, Matt. I think as is our tradition with Always Strikes Late, we've kept the torch burning a bit longer than normal episodes.
that is true. But I believe we have come to a good place as an errant Miles or airborne Miles would say.
And errant and airborne Miles.
Errant airborne Miles.
Who was going Miles to go before he sleeps? Oh, so fell apart at the end there.
I didn't catch it. I think I finally hit the always strikes late enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dear listeners, thanks for taking the time tonight, or in your mid-afternoon or middle of work time, you listen to us. But as always, appreciate your ear time. Feel free to like, subscribe, buy merch, share with other people, and looking forward to catching you in the next one.
Appreciate y'all. And I can't find it.
That was the last word.